family. Welcome to my School of Light. My name is Christie Ramirez and I'm your soul coach. Welcome to our ancient astrology class. I'm so excited to finally begin today's class because there's a couple resources that I got a hold of that I am so excited to delve into already, because this is about going way back, right? This is an ancient astrology class. So we're going to be learning about different forms of astrology, even the Mayan astrology, the Vedic astrology, what's the difference, and the prophecies that these civilizations left behind. And we're also going to briefly learn what each planet represents and even each zodiac. We're going to be learning a little bit more about that in the last classes. This is going to be a course that's going to last about 10 weeks. So it's like a 10-week course. And I want to make this as detailed as possible, something that we don't learn outside. So basically this is about putting in all the information together where this can serve as a reference as well. This can serve for teaching anyone the fundamentals of astrology as well, if anyone's interested in learning about this. Because when you understand the fundamentals of astrology, then you're going to be able to read even the daily astrology, or at least read into your natal chart. But that's of course a more advanced course, but I want to go into the fundamentals first. How astrology came about, why the ancients were so interested in astrology, because there is a reason why they follow the stars, the moon cycles, and the cosmos per se, because there is something ruling that. There was something calling them towards that. There was something that they knew it was beyond their control and beyond their help. So the stars and the planets are governed by God, by source, right? So astrology is a way of us connecting to God and the cosmos, because it's outside of Earth. There's more to Earth. That's a given, right? That's pretty obvious, because we're not the only planet. This is something that researchers and astronomers have already discovered, that there's many other planets and perhaps even life outside of Earth. But now, this ancient astrology class, I want to go even deeper as to the significance behind that, because it's not prudent to stay in this bubble that we're all living in, which is Earth, right? We need to kind of step outside our comfort zone, step outside the globe, and open up our eyes, open up our mind, and expand our knowledge, because this is going to help us to see the bigger picture, and it's going to help us to get in line with our soul path, because this, trust me, it will have a lot to do with your personal vision. You're going to be revealed personally things that perhaps you weren't aware of before. And this is going to activate cosmic consciousness within us all, which is that's another show here in my School of Light as well. And this cosmic consciousness that we're all going to be activated comes through learning. So we need to stay open-minded when it comes to learning new things, and keep doing this deep research and introspection and divulging and delving deep into this ancient Akashic library that's available to all of us in my School of Light. Think of my School of Light as an ancient library filled with all the knowledge from the past, from our ancestors. And that's what we do here in the School of Light. So let's get started then with today's class. I want to start with a brief introduction of ancient astrology. I have a book that I found where I'm going to grab right now, and I'll be right back. Okay. So this book, actually, I found it on Kindle, and this is called The Stories of Ancient Astrology. A fascinating view into the history, right? How ancient astrology came about. This is very important for us to understand the bigger picture, right? So this is not that much of a big book. We're even going to go into metaphysical astrology, even the herbalists, because in my herbology master course, believe it or not, many of the ancient herbalists put in astrology into their theory. So this is something else that sparked that interest in learning about ancient astrology, because I was teaching my herbology master course. And even look at this, the sun and the 12 disciples, the 12 zodiac signs, even the art of astrology in Judaism, the secrets of Stonehenge, which is located in the UK. The scrolls of light and the tables of darkness, even Chinese astrology, King Arthur's skies, the time of Merlin. So let's go deep into this. Okay, so there is an ancient map of the world, which is dated 1548. So we're going way back, 1548 time. For thousands of years, people have looked at the skies and seen something in them to do with a higher purpose for their lives. Astrology can be found in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, the ancient cultures of America, Greece, Rome, and more. It can be found in writing, drawing, architecture, and even songs. It's painted on the walls of temples and presented in mosaics of synagogues. This is true. Astrology in ancient times was an inseparable part of life all around the globe. What we know today as astrology, which is a general forecast in some journal or newspaper, is only a very faint shadow of what astrology was and could be. And this is true, right? And this is what we're getting into. We're putting back the meaning into astrology, because I know astrology has become very mainstream and even to some people a joke, but it really isn't, because this goes way back. There is truly a sacredness to astrology, and this is what we want to rediscover today and bringing back of that glory and light into astrology. When we start to see the way the ancient ones approached astrology, then we can only grieve for the knowledge once available and now lost. But the truth is that humankind can connect to the stars now, just as we did in ancient times. The astrology that our ancestors lived is still with us today and can be a part of our lives. In approaching the skies now, we might find new revelations and even experience real sensations, just as our predecessors once did. Astrology is still a live thing, and we can connect to the stars in our days, just as we did in ancient times. Astrology is the covenant between humankind and its greater neighborhood of the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe, which always was and always will be. So today's book represents 24 different glimpses into ancient astrology, hopefully in a very lively way that will bring in this three-dimensional, reciprocal, and very close relationship that the ancient ones had with the universe that they were once a part of. And you know, for homework, I would recommend that you watch, I like to always give homework in the way of movies and shows. I recommend that you watch this series. It's actually available for free on Netflix. It's called The Ancient Aliens, and they do talk a lot about the ancient aliens and how it has to do with the cosmos and even a little bit of astrology in there. So if you can start taking a look at those series, I would really recommend that you complement that with this class. So we're going to visit different places around the globe in different times, mostly in the past. And we're going to discover the different approaches to the heavens so that he or she can be reminded that the universe is alive in many ways and can become a part of our lives just as it once was. So let's take a look at astrology in ancient times. And of course, this is the basic quote that I always like to bring in by Hermes Trismegistus in the Emerald Tablet, which is as above so below, as within so without, as the universe so the soul. Because this is true, right? We are mirrors and paralleling what's happening in the cosmos here on Earth. And this is what brings alive the different dimensions that are always at play, the heavens and the earth, and even life outside of here, right? This is proof that there is life outside of here. That's just obvious, right? And of course, how it looks like is not so obvious, but this is where we can each get our own personal perspective of what might be calling to us. Because a lot of people are called by our ancestors. A lot of people, especially if you're awakened and perhaps are a light worker, you are being helped by elders in spirit form. That's how, for example, the Mayan civilization, let's bring in the Mayans. We all know that the Mayans disappeared in the year 2020, right? And their calendar was dated from 2012 to 2020. And this is something that we're going to go deep into because this has to do with the prophecy that they left behind. And they prophesied that 2020 per se was going to be the end of their world. But this was, of course, in a metaphorical spirit sense. They ascended and they became spirit. And so their civilization in human form disappeared, but it doesn't mean that they're still alive. And this is how even the ancient Lemurians are still alive in spirit form. Maybe showing up to some of you if you resonate with that culture, because they are still alive. They never left, you see. And this is the other spiritual realm that we are wanting to have access to, and that we can definitely see when you become open to this. And this is how astrology in ancient times also relates, because those who are able to interpret it in its most purest forms are definitely connected to spirit and the heavens and directly channel. It's a different way of channeling the energies. Like when I channel my energies in my daily morning spiritual guidance, I don't necessarily connect to the astrology per se, because that wasn't the way that I was educated, right? I was educated more in psychology. But the more that I learn about astrology, it ties in with everything that I'm channeling anyways, even if I don't know. And this is where the truth comes in, because it is at play. So it's a beautiful thing. And I want to learn more about this as well. And this is where we're going to go deep into this course. Okay. All right, so in many ancient cultures, there are references to astrology, right? The state of the heavenly bodies, traveling or just sitting outside without bright lights, or even astral traveling. People were exposed to the stars night after night, year after year. They would have watched their journey across the sky, and they would have known their names and their orbits. And this is something that we're also going to learn, perhaps in the advanced course, which is the next course after we finish ancient astrology. I want to go into deep of the star systems and even the constellations. I want to make it really, really deep. I even have a notebook where I've been drawing these constellations because I love learning about the stars. And you know, this is where star seeds come into play. Some people actually incarnate and come from star seeds. Like take Jesus, for example. Take the ancient Egyptians. They all incarnated from the star Sirius. And that's outside of Earth. And this is where the ancient astrology comes in, because the stars have a lot to do with this as well. It's not just the planets, it's also the star systems. So we're going to go into it all. This is probably going to be like a 20-week course, but it's going to go deep. So the interesting thing is that in almost every culture, people related the position of the stars to the human state and would calculate the destiny and future of a person, a clan, or country from the positions of the celestial bodies. So in the old days, the wise astrologer played an essential part in the tribe or the kingdom. And of course, because I said this before in my first year classes, but we're going to redo all the classes in the second year, because there's another class that I have called the Mystery Teachings. And I taught a chronological historical timeline into how these esoteric teachings, beliefs, and traditions came about. We even go way back to the Druids, the Celtics, and astrology and the intuitive prophets per se played a huge role in kingdoms back in the day. The kings and queens used to rely on astrologers to give them guidance, and this actually took the forefront in a lot of their actions that they took as a king or a queen. So they based a lot of their decisions on what these prophets told them, you see, because they believed that there was heavenly guidance and truth to what they were saying. And even in Freud's time, which was the first founder of psychology, Sigmund Freud, since he was in that era where psychology was still new, so this is why ancient astrology goes even way back than psychology. Psychology is relatively a new field per se. But I have another class here in my School of Light where we go into evolutionary psychology, because psychology is always evolving. And you can just see this through the evolution of the early times of psychology, right? Then came Carl Jung. Carl Jung expanded on Sigmund Freud's theories and even changed them a bit. After that, we have Alfred Adler. We have other ones that came after that as well. And eventually even marriage and family therapy, which is one of the newest branches of psychology, which is what I mastered in, is one of the even newest ones of psychology. So even astrology has evolved the same way, which is why there's another branch called evolutionary astrology, where they mix in everything, the modern aspects and the ancient aspects. Because if we're looking at this word evolutionary, it's important to be open-minded, because even herbology works this way. As I'm teaching the first classes of herbology, we go first into the development and the history of herbology. And herbology nowadays is a mix of science, which is more Western medicine, the scientific approach, and the ancient theories of herbology. And this is what we get today, right? And so let me break this down for you, because back in the day, let's put this metaphor of herbology, because this is how astrology right now is working into play. Back in the day, the shamans used to know what herb was good for what. And guess how they knew actually? I'm gonna, share a little bit of what I've been learning in this course, which of course you can purchase as part of my Body, Mind, and Spirit Health and Wellness brand. But basically the shamans knew and discovered what herb was good for what ailment. When an animal brushed against a certain tree, which is where the herb came from, or even the bark of a tree, which makes a lot of tea concoctions and medicinal tinctures and herbs, right, that are very potent. When an animal rubbed off a certain tree and they got healed in whatever they were dealing with, or that's how they came about the significance and created books and encyclopedias of different herbs and their benefits through observance. This is how the ancient astrologers worked when it came to the stars and the cosmos and the planets, through observance, right? You see the ancient civilizations carving into the walls, into the temples, the different moon cycles, and how that dictated a lot of their rituals when they decided to perhaps take action in war, or perhaps their crops. Everything was based off the moon cycles. And this is a huge part where I do my spirituality retreats on every new and full moon, because I believe there is always a new beginning and a closing of a cycle with every new and full moon. These are the cycles that we're always continuously progressing through. And so the herbologists back in the day didn't necessarily know the reasoning of why something was good. They just knew it was good, right? They just knew the answer. But now modern day herbology, which later, ancient astrology started to be discarded as just kind of like fake teachings, false teachings, right? Even it started to be labeled as something that was just fictitious, right? Not truly scientifically based. And so the scientists started to do research, and they started to discover, okay, these ancients were onto something, because yes, they were right, but now they were able to explain it why they were right. They were able to get the reasoning, the explanation. So now we're at this point in modern day, in the age of Aquarius, where we have blended in the modernism, the modern science, Western medicine, and the ancient Eastern medicine and beliefs, shamanistic ways. And now we bridge them together and we get exponential growth and evolutionary discoveries, right? And this is how astrology and psychology also work, which are other branches of our ancient ancestors. And this is the reason why I'm bringing about this class and course, because there is truth behind everything our ancients used to do. Our ancient elders were very wise because they were very connected and they were very detached from the rural civilizations, right? Nowadays, we're very ruled by technology, and of course, this is all due to Aquarian influence. And it's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when we let it take over and let it overpower us. But when we can learn to take our power back and bring in a healthy balance of the ancestral knowledge and the modern day discoveries, then we can come to a place where we actually make more gains and more progress that's going to be solid. And so this is where astrology comes into play, ancient astrology. So I hope that that example kind of helped you to understand the deeper, bigger picture, how it all comes together, right? So this person used their knowledge of the stars to predict if it was going to be a fertile year, if there was going to be a war, whether a marriage should be set, and so on. In the past, kings would not go to war without consulting their astrologer, you see, like I just said, and couples would not get married without first verifying their astrological compatibility, because everybody has a different natal chart. And this has a lot to do with even relationship compatibility, which is something that I'm interested in, because of course I am a love psychologist and I've actually have been learning about this, and soon enough I will be giving you more updates about this new service of mine, but not quite yet, but just stay on the lookout. So definitely watch out for that, because I'm coming up with new services. And let's continue. In different cultures then, we have stories of astrologers who taught, gave advice, and then provided guidance, like a counselor would, right? Because it's not enough to just look at the compatibility, but now you have to actually be able to provide therapy with it, right? So this is the evolutionary psychology and astrology aspect to it, combining the two. Josephus Flavius, who lived 2,000 years ago, wrote in his book Jewish Antiquities how in his time a king wouldn't go to war without first consulting with an astrologer. That the army would consist not only of warriors, but also of predictors or seers, aka prophets, people who could see into the future or predict outcomes of a decision made. Perhaps the reason that people have a fascination with the skies is because they provide a way to learn about themselves. And this is again where astrology also comes into play. It's not only about predicting the future. That's a little bit more of what the mainstream use of astrology is. There's deepness into astrology. It actually can teach you a lot about yourself and about your deeper soul, because your astrology natal chart is your deep soul. It's truth. And a lot of people live their life through their ego, which is not what their true natal chart is based on, right? And this is where our soul evolution comes into play, because we want to evolve to live through our higher self, our true higher soul within ourselves. And this is what astrology can help us to bring out of us, help us to learn more about ourselves, you see. So there is an ancient saying, as above, so below. One interpretation of that saying is, know the universe and know thyself. And this is the saying that our angel study cards actually have at the bottom of each card. In my angel study class, which is a feature here in my School of Light as well, which is a weekly thing, every angel that we learn about every week help us to transcend human distortions. Because there is this philosophy that when we know the universe, we can know thyself, our true self, and then hence transcend these human distortions that are keeping us bound to our egoic self. It could be said that as human beings are part of nature and inhabitants of the universe, they work by the same laws as the stars. So from that perspective, we can learn more about ourselves by studying the larger domain that we live in. But still, studying the stars only to get a better grasp about our lives, or only to calculate the best timing for doing one thing or another, misses a higher point. You see, it's not just about that. Astrology is far more than that and beyond that. In ancient times, the knowledge of the greater potential of astrology beyond just personal decision making was held by only a few trained individuals. For the people who worked with esoteric astrology, the stars in the sky were not only bright lights or a tool for prediction. For them, astrology was inseparable from their way of life. It was part of their cosmic perception, belief system, and religion. So now let's get into ancient Greece. For example, ancient Greece and even Rome, which adopted a great deal from the Greek culture, stars and gods were one. And if you want to learn more about Greek mythology, there is a class that's completed here in my School of Light. So the Greeks not only predicted the movement of the planets and the gods in the sky, actually we talk about this in my Greek mythology class. We talk how each Greek god is related to a planet and why they were related in their belief. How it ties in with the mythology behind it, right? The stories that the planets tell us through mythology. The Greeks also tried to influence the planets and gods by building the beautiful temples for them. Yeah, that's why they worship them, right? By praying and by conducting rituals and ceremonies. Now, this might seem today as superstitious, right? Of course, but it's based on a profound insight, acknowledging that not only do the planets affect us energetically, but we can also affect the planets and stars. And mind you, many people come from different planets and stars. So for the Greeks, it was known that a simple prayer or heroic act could make the gods change their decisions and hence change the way a planet will influence one's life. But of course, nowadays, we know that this is not possible because we know that this is beyond our control. And this is where the Greeks, of course, had a stagnation, had a little bit of a stubbornness to it because you can't change what's happening in the cosmos. So it's about surrender. So later on in history, we will see practitioners like Culpeper using different herbs to change a certain astrological influence upon a person. Now this is of course where what we learned in my Herbology Master Course, yes, it is possible. There was different herbalists back in the day that had theories that different zodiac signs benefited from different herbs at different times of the month or of the year based on what was happening astrologically. So that's something even really cool that it would be cool to learn about as a deeper advanced course in my herbology class. But the notion of the reciprocity between the stars and human beings goes much further than that and touches high spiritual truths. As we will only slowly discover reading the pages of this book, there is a mutuality between humans and the celestial bodies, and the connection that does not go one way only. And you know what's a keen observation that I've made, which I think is kind of funny, but I think it's really true. Haven't you noticed that people actually do look like their zodiac sign in some way? Like they have features of that animal that it represents. And it's funny because it's true. It's true. I've seen it all too much. And this is related and just a sign of proof that yes, ancient astrology is true. And there's things that we can learn today from this and that we can bring into our present day life. Okay. All right. So Native Americans believed that when one of the tribe elders died, they turned into a bright star in the sky. This is why they used to name a lot of constellations. They used to name them after people, right? We have like Cleopatra. We have the, what's that star constellation? There's a star constellation. I forgot the name of it, but there's one that also was named after a mythology story. Cassiopeia, right? Cassiopeia. So they study some of the stars as important figures from their past. This demonstrates their belief that humans can develop to be stars, shining forth and leading the way with their light for others, and also even changing the celestial scenery forever. When we compare today's weekly horoscope in the newspaper to the tremendous knowledge that the ancients had, it's impossible not to feel that they have lost something along the way. Of course, that doesn't apply to every astrologer. Compared to what the ancient ones knew and felt, we still have a lot to recover in matters of understanding the universe, the stars, the planets, and their influence upon us. And that's everything that we're going to go deep into. Perhaps even a foray into the knowledge that still is remembered from ancient cultures can give us some insights into how astrology could be relevant today and into the future. So we move into opening the gates of the temple. Dendera zodiac. Let's begin this journey in the 3rd century BC, even though astrology begins even much earlier in time. We stand in front of Hathor's temple near Luxor on the Nile, Egypt. How appropriate, because there is an Egyptian mythology class also coming up soon in my School of Light. This shrine, which is part of the Dendera complex of temples, holds many treasures for us, as on its walls there are many undeniably astrological paintings. You see, they left behind us these clues for us to delve deep into. As we walk beneath the 24 pedestals at the entrance, we see the bow carrier, followed by the goat, right, which is representative of Capricorn, the zodiac sign. We see the magical water bearer with the zigzag electrical radiation issuing from his hands, which of course became the symbol of Aquarius. And we also see the sacred scarab that pushes the sun on its heavenly journey, later to become the crab of the sign Cancer. The whole temple is designed as a reflection of the heavens and is dedicated to Hathor, which is goddess of cosmic order. Hathor was a goddess of Egyptian mythology, which plays a huge role in astrology. Over and over again, in different forms, in different places in the temple, the stars and the gods shine at us with their secrets. But the glory is on the ceiling of the main hall of the temple, where a circular chart, so they used to read these astrological charts, believe it or not. That's why their charts back in the day were so much more different, of course, because it's evolved than what it is nowadays. Nowadays we have so many new stars, even asteroids that are put on the chart. There's so much more different information. But back in the day it was just so much more basic, right? More simpler. And sometimes we do need to get back to the basics, to the simpleness. So they were filled, these circular charts, with symbols, drawings, and inscriptions depicting the skies. There we find not only all of the zodiac constellations, but also Draco and the Great Bear Andromeda, which is another star system, and Orion, another star system. And interesting enough, Draco is one of the characters in the Harry Potter movie. So in the only circular astrological drawing found in Egypt, we can see the gods walking in the skies among these constellations. These gods are the planets of our solar system, and they are located on the outer edge of the circle. What is the circle, right? Our solar system is surrounded by planets, and at the center is the sun, which is why the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, used to worship the sun, and they called them Sun Ra, right? And this is something that we're going to go deep into my Egyptian mythology class as well, but this is important because they were onto something, okay? And so correctly, in actuality, the closest to us to be found on the ecliptic plane, that forms the borders of the circle in this drawing. And when one looks deeper, one can see a view that the skies that is hardly if at all perceived today. It begins to dawn us that the Egyptians held a three-dimensional picture of the skies, a way of looking at the heavens that is rare in our modern times. The glyphs depicted the knowledge that they had of the skies, not only of each star's location, but also their meaning and their essence. The constellations on the chart are not drawn as a circle, but as a spiral. And I always like to bring in this metaphor of the spiral because these are the cycles of life. Even though it looks like we're going in circles, which is what our planets are constantly doing, there's always progression, getting closer to the core of our ascension journey. And when one thinks of it, a spiral is a more accurate description of a celestial neighborhood, as the cosmos is always expanding and in movement. You see, we're always spiritually growing. Our generation, humankind, is always evolving. And the Milky Way is a spiral itself. But did we ever think that the ancient ones would take that into consideration? The circular depiction of the stars in the sky in the chart of Dendera is supported by 12 figures on the surrounding walls. Hence the 12 zodiac signs, even the 12 disciples in Jesus' Last Supper, right? So there's a lot of symbolism with this number 12 that we see. 4 ladies and 8 bird-headed creatures. What I'm getting here is that there's 4 feminine zodiac signs, and it's true because as we're going to learn deeper about these astrological signs, there are 4 zodiac signs that are ruled more by the feminine energy, and there's other 8 ones that are ruled more by the masculine energy. It doesn't mean whether you're a man or a female, it's ruled more by the energies of a masculine or a feminine. The ladies are standing at the crucial points, what did I just say? Of Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus, marking the 4 elements, 4 seasons, and 4 fixed signs, right? We have the element of fire in the form of Leo, water in the form of Scorpio, air in the form of Aquarius, and then earth in the form of Taurus, the 4 elements and the 4 seasons. And we're going to go deeper into this later in this course. And so the creatures are paired also in 4 couples, facing each other, together demonstrating the life and death principle, or the plus and minus principle, or as known in astrology, the mutable and cardinal signs. And of course, this is also the opposites that all the signs have. The opposite of Taurus, for example, is Scorpio. And then we'll be learning the other ones. I don't know off the top of my head. But there is much more to discover just from observation of this depiction of the heavens. For example, one can count 36 figures in the outer circle of the chart. That could represent 360 days of the year, or even the 360 degrees of Earth's cycle around the sun, right? The 360 degrees is a complete cycle orbit around the sun. But these 36 figures are not standing equally apart from one another, which makes us wonder why and what they represent. Another thing is that one can track illusions set by the painter to make us think that they're looking at a drawing of a certain sign, then to realize that this is actually something else than we first thought drawn here. There's something about the chart that does not allow one to settle for one's first impression. Of course, this nudges you to want to explore even deeper the meaning. And even, this chart itself was drawn on the ceiling of the Dendera temple around 2,000, 3,000 years ago, 2,300 years ago, which is actually a replica of a much more ancient chart demonstrating a knowledge of the skies and its secrets that predates the Dendera complex of shrines by centuries and even millennia. There's a quote here from the Temple of Dendera scripts that says, "The skies rejoice, the earth dances." This is the mirroring effect. The sacred musicians shout in praise. These are the ceremonies and rituals that people used to always undergo because they knew that the cosmos were ruling their life here on earth. One would think that astrology, or even any subject for that matter, would slowly develop and evolve through time in a linear fashion. And we might even think that today we have reached the peak of astrology, but facts contradict that, and mostly in the giant Sphinx of Giza, which is in Egypt, they would think otherwise. Closer examination of the historical records show many examples of cultures, religions, ideologies, and philosophies emerging almost fully formed, rapidly rising to a peak before entering into a long, slow process of decline, such as the rapid rise of ancient Greece with all of its myths and art, and the Roman Empire that rose with its buildings, army, and technology that was at its best in its earlier days, and Mesopotamia, which again, the early days were its glory days. So now astrology shows a similar pattern, appearing in its most sophisticated form in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, this is when it started to become even more evolved and understood for that matter. But it was never to reach this high point again. So I feel like we did regress a little bit, of course, with the fall of the Egyptian civilization, right, with their dark ages. But the Egyptian culture, if you think about it, started 5,000 years ago and ended in the 1st century BC. We're talking about the ancient Egyptian civilization. Its peak was in the Old Kingdom, where it rose with all of its glory and included everything we know of mighty Egypt to this day. The mummies, the scrolls of the dead, the temples, the myths, the hieroglyphics, everything from Egypt's early days. Egypt went through many changes geographically, politically, and culturally. But throughout its history, we can see the continuous thread of Egyptian culture with its gods, beliefs, myths, and symbols as it appeared in the glorious early kingdom. The pyramids, which is Egypt's by far greatest accomplishment, which actually was built by the ancient Egyptians, Lemurians to be exact. No, it was actually, what could have been, because there were a little bit of survivors of the Lemurians during that age that actually did migrate to ancient Egypt and incarnated from Sirius. Those are the ones that build these energetic vortexes for all of us now in the future. So this has meaning behind it, okay? So the Egyptians touched on a deeper meaning of the stars. For them, the stars were their place of origin. You see what I'm saying? Because they already knew, right? They were from the start. They were from Sirius. And so they worshiped the stars, and they also left clues for us humans. And the place that they were aiming to return to after the end of their physical life here on Earth. And I'm going to give you a little sneak peek about the Egyptian mythology and the beliefs is that they truly focused all of their living life on their afterlife. It's like they were preparing during their whole life here on Earth just for their afterlife, because they believed in the afterlife very heavily. And of course that's true, but they based all of their actions in this life for their present life, which is what we should be focusing on, right? Reaping good karma. And they even, used to build their burial temples, really like invest all of their riches on that, because they saw the afterlife as something more worthy than them just living here on Earth. So, it was a daily focus of attention. And not only because of the sky's visibility at night, but because of the whole of Egyptian life per se. This was an entire Egyptian belief and culture that they lived by as the imitation of the cosmic order of our universe. They saw different levels in the skies and looked at them three-dimensionally, not flat as astrologers today perceive them. They looked beyond. They had an understanding of the nature of the different planets, stars, and constellations, and painted their colors on their sarcophagi. They named the stars, knew how to draw hieroglyphics depicting these celestial bodies, or you can say constellations, and they were in constant connection with them. The notion that we are a spirit that makes a part of the journey in the body was a fact of life to Egyptians, and they saw their existence on Earth only as preparation for the journey that awaits the spirit after physical death. And this is the transcendence. This is what the ascension is all about, you see? They believed that after the death of the physical body, the spirit will need to continue on to the higher realms that are beyond our own solar system, and hence travel to the stars of their origin, finding its way amongst the oceans of lights. So they studied the stars and the skies carefully. They learned the cosmos. For them, it was more important and vivid than actual life. Scrolls were written to describe the journey that one goes through in their skies after physical departure, and the journey was taught and memorized by heart, which for them was the seat of knowledge. For ancient Egyptians, the skies were the source of everything, and life on Earth was only a faint shadow of the ways of the heavens. Their land was built as a reflection of the skies, with the Nile as the Milky Way. And the Nile was their Nile River, right, which was the source of their crops, their fertility. Their temples demonstrated the heavenly order over and over again by their location, by their architecture, by their glyphs, and their drawings. Their gods, who were the manifestations of these celestial bodies, demonstrated the way to the stars, and this was confirmed over and over again by means of theater and ceremonies. You see, leaving behind clues in their artwork, in their music. This awareness of cosmic order with its celestial composition was paramount in everything that the Egyptians did. It entered into the process of naming their gods, their mythology, their glyphs and texts, their temples, their political order, and more. Even their belief about life and the afterlife journey, and especially the king's afterlife journey, demonstrated their knowledge of the cyclical movement of the constellations in the skies. Movement of the constellations in the skies, and going slowly to the underworld as the sun rises and coming back to life the next evening, right? The sunset and the sunrise. And they truly also relied a lot on that, even their daily routine. This is something that we go even deeper into my Sacred Woman Healing Program. The cyclical movement of the gods expanded to greater rotation in the skies as the celestial view changed from season to season and from era to era. You see, we are in the age of Aquarius right now. This is a new era. The Dark Ages was the era of Pisces, which is, if you think about it, it's a lot of deep subconscious dark nights coming to surface, right? Aquarius is this aspect and theme of revolution, evolutionary change. So when one thinks of the level of awareness that was present in all aspects of Egyptian life, we start to appreciate the knowledge of a people focused on their universal existence, who see their fleeting appearance here on Earth as a small episode in a greater story, hence the bigger picture. And that's how we're going to end today's class, a brief introduction into this ancient astrology course. Definitely want to continue watching. My name is Christie Ramirez, and I'm your soul coach and also your spiritual teacher. Thank you for being a part of my School of Light. I'm wishing you all an amazing and beautiful day. I'll see you all next class. Namaste.